guess where we are today? We're ending Philippians, but not ending Philippians. Okay, so we're still in Philippians. I'm just going to stop speaking about Philippians. Do any of you have a summary of Philippians yet in your mind? Any of you have a summary yet? Let me take a chance. Can anyone say what happens in Philippians? Like a real oversight, a heavy oversight. Accounting book, okay. I like that term. It's an accounting book. Anyone else? Okay. Okay. And then he goes over into 3 examples. After the example of Christ, he uses the example of Epaphroditus, of Timothy, and of Paul. And then he goes on to say what they should do in the church to make sure there's unity. Okay, so that's the broad oversight. Now, there's 2 parts in sometimes knowing a book and sometimes being able to take something out of a book. Okay, so first you must know the book before you take something out of the book. And the reason for that is you get what we call inductive and deductive study. That's when you go to the Bible and you deductively say, this must mean this. But where did you gather the data from? So you have a crime scene and you see there's glass and a dead body. What's the first thing you think? Murder. Okay. But how? Now you have to look around and you see, okay, there's a brick. Someone must have thrown a brick through the window and killed the person. And all of that's deductively, because you just, what you see you're using. But inductively is when you allow the situation to tell you what's going on, except instead of bringing a pre-consisting idea to the story. And I often find that that's the most dangerous thing we do when reading the Bible, is all preconceived ideas we bring along with us. This must mean this. I'm in this difficult situation. I open a psalm, this must be for me. And the psalm goes on, save us, oh save us. And then it goes, kill them all, those heathens. And you think, yes, I'd like to kill them all. And you start to apply a certain thinking. Okay, there must be an enmity with those who are against me. You know who else had this deductive problem? And you sometimes get it in prophecies. You get this prophecy and you great catch, Andre, thank you, Andre. And you deductively assume something, like this is this beautiful prophecy, it's about this, and this is going to mean this. You know who else stepped into that trap? Israel. They were waiting for a Messiah to save them from this Roman occupation. Like they were clinging to a 100-year-old prophecy. But as time grew more difficult, the prophecy was sculpted for their desire. And as the more time that was elapsed from the prophecy to the now, the more they sculpted it to their specific desire. He must come and save us from this Roman occupation, or whatever the occupation is. And sometimes we do that with prophecy as well. But we do that with Bible verses as well, because the Bible is prophecy as well. So remember to thoughtfully think about what you're thinking about. Okay, so we did all the study parts, so the teaching part's gone. Now we're doing into the preaching part, and the preaching is speaking life into things. Okay, so I took out one thing that stood out to me And it was that first part in the early parts. I think it's chapter 1, verse 12-ish already. Remember, he said, I'm in jail, and though I'm in jail, it's still this amazing opportunity for me to advance the gospel. And in advancing the gospel, I have people that are advancing the gospel as well, but for selfish ambition, for their own gain. And he said, but that's fine as well. It's still for the advancement of the kingdom. So Paul is exhibiting a certain thinking. Then you go on to verse 19. It starts there, 18b, it says, yes, I will rejoice, for I know that through prayer, through your prayer, and the help of the Holy Spirit and the Spirit of Jesus Christ, this will turn out for my deliverance. So Paul's in this difficult situation. Where is Paul? On holiday. He's at some Arctic coffee at work in the warm baths. He's in prison. Okay, so there's 4 prison letters. You get Ephesians, Colossians, Philippians, and Philemon. So that's the 4 prison letters. So he's writing them, and there you should pick up something that's extremely important to Paul, a thinking. I recently, I like to put, like, while I'm working, background information on, and this time it was death row inmates. And they had interviews with people that are on death row. You know what death row is? Okay, it's the end of the line. So you're a prisoner waiting to die. But then it was interesting. Do you know in America, and this is now the interesting parts, do you know in America, they're struggling with the execution part? Because some of the pharmaceutical companies no longer allow them to use their drugs to kill people. So now they have this battle. Now they reintroduced a cocktail, and they like putting in this stuff and that stuff. And the one guy, I think, took 28 minutes to die. And they like, well, this isn't good for our PR. Prison's bad, but taking 28 minutes to kill someone's really bad. So now no one wants to like use the medicine anymore. And they're in this moment where they're hanging, and they're speaking to one of the death row inmates. They found him the day before to say, tomorrow will be your D-Day. And he's like greeting his family and goodbye everyone, see you on the other side, and whatever he does. And just to come to the chair, and they say, sorry, we're postponing this, we're not sure yet. And they postponed it for like a month. And after a month, it was his D-Day again, and he came to the to the place where they would give him the injections, and they said, sorry, no, we're postponing this. And he's like, just send me to a firing squad. This not knowing when I'm going to die or am I going to live is really difficult. Like, I know I was on death row, I was going to die. That was fine. But now this, being in this moment of not knowing I'm going to die or will I die, I'm psyching myself up. And I thought, that sounds like Paul. He was constantly in this position. Am I going to make it? No. Yes. I don't know. And that's difficult. And Paul says, he coins himself as something. He calls himself a prisoner. Have you ever read that part in the Bible? It's in Ephesians. Ephesians 3, if I remember correctly. Let me... 3 and 1. Now let's go to 3. Ephesians 3 verse 1. It says, for this reason I, Paul, a prisoner of Christ Jesus, on behalf of you Gentiles. So now, while reading the book of Philippians, I'm thinking about this prisoner thing, because he's writing from jail, and he has this unsure situation. Do you remember in Philippians, he says, I might live, I might die. both is nice. I'd like to see Jesus, but I'd rather live for your behalf. And it's this interesting space he's in. And he doesn't say anything else, but he calls himself a prisoner, and we spoke about it. He calls himself a prisoner of Christ. I thought he was a prisoner in a Roman jail. And it's an interesting thing. Now you should start to chew on that. Okay, so Paul's calling himself a prisoner of Christ, though he's not a prisoner in the jail of Christ. He's a Roman captive. So now think about it. And as soon as you start to think about the situation, even though Paul's situation and circumstances is difficult, he decides his own fate. And have you read that part that's from verse 12-ish. He says, I want you to know, brothers, that what happened to me has really served to advance the gospel, so that it has become known throughout the whole imperial guard and to all the rest of that my imprisonment is for Christ. So while Paul is in a difficult situation, what is Paul doing? He's advancing the gospel. Okay, so that's a good life lesson for us. Did Paul choose to be in a Roman prison? Yes and no. Yes and no. That's that counterpoint you have to balance on. We could say, no, he was imprisoned because of Christianity. No, he chose to be there because he knew it would advance the gospel. He leaned into difficult situations in life. He didn't take the easy road. So that's a good lesson from Paul. And Corneille and I was speaking about this at our coffee date, which is really important because that's where you get sermons. We were speaking at our coffee date. Do you know how difficult death row would be? Imagine yourself on death row. So it's a tiny little space you're in, and they don't let those prisoners mix with the other prisoners, because if you're already going to be executed, what do you have left to lose? So those guys are normally dangerous. It's not like your normal dangerous criminal. It's a really dangerous criminal. They have to put them somewhere else because the dangerous criminals are afraid of them. So these are interesting people. They have nothing to lose. Death would be better than just staying in there day in and day out and not knowing when. Like this one guy, he started there in the age of 15. At the age of 15, he started in jail. He has like 150 more years left to do on death row. So I know he's not going to make it outside. So that's interesting that Paul decides to call himself a prisoner. But I think Paul goes even further than just calling himself a normal prisoner. He made himself a death row prisoner. He's not going to get out of this. He's in prison for Christ. He's a prisoner of Christ. And that's an interesting thing, because that's now where we should start to think. How much have I given up? Because how much has a prisoner given up? Do they decide when they eat? No. Do they decide when they shower? No. Do they have any decisions in their life left? Why? Because they gave it up. So calling yourself a prisoner of Christ, what does that mean? It means you've given up your rights. You've enlisted into something you know is going to end in something, but it's not for my glory. It's all for His glory. So Paul's in this moment, but now you have to think about it even more. You probably read the book of Acts, and in Acts you see Paul could have been in jail for 2 days, for a week. Do you know sometimes he was in jail for 2 years at a time? Do you know what was a really frustrating one in Acts 24? He's in jail, and the guy that's in charge in the area is, I think it was Felix or Festus. I think it's Felix. And Felix kind of knows what this way is about, because they didn't call it Christianity yet, they call it the way. So he kind of knows what the way is about, but he's not sold on it. So he keeps Paul in prison for 2 years and sends for him often to speak about things, and then he just sends Paul back. How frustrating would that be? I mean, you're Paul. Most of the modern church was built upon the works he did. He evangelized the whole world, and then he's stuck in a prison for 2 years on the whims of a person who'd like to hear something from him, but's never going to decide for Christ. You know, it feels like a waste of time. You could see that as a waste of time, but still, what does Paul do? Does he see it as a waste of time? He advances the gospel. So if I always say it like this, I remember it was it in Bible school? Bible school, I hung out a lot with this guy called Rodney Seal, and I remember standing in a queue, and when the queue was there, I hate a queue. I mean, queues are for poor people. I really don't like a queue. So I never go to like the shops at the 15th of the month or anything like that. I stay at home. And he's standing in a queue, and he said, okay, if the devil's going to make this queue take this long, I'm going to evangelize. Then he starts to speak to the people in front of him and behind him. And I remember we got into a lift, and in the lift he says, okay, he says, if this lift goes down, the cables break and it goes down, I'm going up, where are you going? And he was constantly advancing the gospel. And that's not like me. I'm not going to ask you all those questions, but I am going to make it difficult when I have to be in a queue. But I think we missed the assignment. We missed the assignment of what it means to be a prisoner of Christ. We like to be apostles. We like to be prophets. We like to be these beautiful little children, adopted, joint heirs. You know all those titles. We don't like the apostle part, the prisoner part. And do you know the real sadness about it all? We're all prisoners. We're all prisoners of something. So we can agree on that. Something is keeping you captive currently. You have the decision, same as Paul, to be a prisoner of what? So while we were talking about this, I was thinking about the part that security sometimes is a prison for us. Have you ever thought about that? Have you seen what a house looks like? It's like a little jail. I live in a little jail with nice appliances. It's still a little jail. You know what else? What prison walls we built as well, by thinking we can save for tomorrow. Do you know that? We can be in control of tomorrow. Do you know what we call that? Policies, plans, types of insurances. We have all these things we build around our lives. We think, if I can have this, then I'll definitely be safe. It will work out fine. And I'm not saying be irresponsible. I'm just saying that's not safety. We have these policies for if something incurable happens to me. Well, I have to tell you, if something incurable happens to you, it's incurable. So we put our security in something we think we can control. And what does that do? You lie awake at night and wondering about all the things you control. We make plans and we think we're okay. You know what we call that? That's a prison we built for ourselves, this false situation. We think everything's going to be fine. I remember me discussing finances with a family member once, and they saying, you should have this, and you should have this, and you should have this. And I said, yes, and tomorrow if this whole economic system goes down, what happens then? Where did I put my faith in? Was my faith grounded in the things I could do? And once again, don't be ignorant. If you should have insurance if you have a car and it's still the bank's car, or you get into an accident with someone else. I'm just saying, don't think that's the be-all and end-all. But we build all these tiny little prisons around us, and we call them caution. Like the other day I said to Corneille, there's no longer like 90% of boys with a broken arm. Boys don't get broken arms anymore. They get iPads. And not iPads like a pirate. iPads like an apple. It's because we've become very cautious. Don't do that, don't climb that, don't jump off that. You've become a cautious people, but in more than just don't climb into the tree. And there you read about Paul in Philippians. What does Paul say? I'm not sure I'm going to make it, but if I do, great. If I don't, great. He just throws caution into the wind. He's really this maverick. And I like to keep it short, so that's why I'm following my notes. But Corneille gave me a beautiful verse. You know this one in Ephesians 5, verse 1. It says, therefore be imitators of God as beloved children, and walk in love as Christ loved us and so gave himself up for us, a fragrant offering and a sacrifice to God. So you all know that one. Be imitators of God. Be imitators of Christ. Have you read the Message version? Which I don't often read the Message version, but the Message is actually very beautiful here. It says, watch what God does. And when you do it, like children who learn proper behavior from their parents, mostly what God does is love. Keep company with him and learn a life of love. Observe how Christ loved us. His love was not cautious, but extravagant. He didn't love in order to get something from us, but to give everything of himself to us. Love like that. And I think as soon as we start to think about it, he loved extravagantly. He didn't love cautiously. Is that one of the walls we have in our prison? Being cautious about loving, being cautious about caring, being cautious about giving. Can we honestly say, like Paul said, we are prisoners of Christ? Or can we say, like the rest of the world, we are prisoners of our own device, of our own decisions? And I think we're landing the ship there, and I think that's something we should have introspection about. Where have you become too cautious? In what situations, with what family members have you become too cautious? Because sometimes there's certain people you don't say the correct thing towards. You're a prisoner of what will their reaction be, not what a prisoner of Christ. And it's difficult. It's not easy. But that verse in Ephesians says, be imitators of God. Like Christ gave up everything extravagantly, keeping nothing back. That's part of the Christian lifestyle as well, we should be able to follow and look into. And then I want you to think about that. If I was on death row, what does that look like? And how can you translate that into life? Do you know prisoners don't like to be out of prison? As soon as they've been in prison for a certain time, they no longer function in normal life. They need structure, and without structure, a meal time, a exercise time, a bathroom time, anything like that, they just go crazy. And I think that's one of the things we can think about in our Christianity as well. Without structure, we go crazy. So if you're a prisoner of Christ, there's supposed to be structure in your life, because that's how prison works. But we think we're free prisoners. We can just run around, and you're actually a prisoner on the run. So you say you're a prisoner for Christ, but you do what you want to do when you want to do it, then you're a runaway prisoner. And that's something that's actually very poor. Have you ever started to read the book of Paul? What does he say? I, Paul, a servant and apostle. He starts that thing always the same. He said, grace and peace be to you. It's like his normal thing. And then he goes into, I've been praying for you. I've been thinking about you. I've been working towards a certain thing. Who's read his CV of suffering? In Corinthians, you get his CV of suffering. I've been stoned this many times. I've been beaten this many times. Looks like Paul is on a rigorous journey to die. He's leaning into it. And sometimes we're afraid to speak to someone close to us about it. And it's not an accusation as much as it is we should reflect and think about, where are we prisoners of our own devices or prisoners of Christ?